Digitizer, and I have designs by Baby Moon. And I've seen some questions on several Facebook groups, and so I thought this morning I would just show you all how you can make your own motif in Stitch Artist Embroidery Software that you can use. There's been a popular motif floating around that's like a little piece of lace that can be used as an applique. And so let's just get into it real quick. Let me just show you what we can do here. So I actually started drawing this over here, and this little shape that's like a little wagon wheel with a zigzag on it. So let me just show you. Let's get a new page here. You can use it in lots of different ways, but let's make it, okay? So that's what I wanted to show you that we can do. We can make it. So I've got a 4x4 screen, a hoop size up here. I'm zoomed about, 100, almost 200% in, just because I want to get real close and see what I'm doing. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to decide how big this motif is. I haven't seen it actually stitched out on anything, but in my head, the ideal size for this is less than a ½ inch tall and wide, right? So that's a nice size. It would be a fairly open stitch that you could use. We're going to make it as a motif so that we can stretch it, make it smaller, make it bigger, do all kinds of things with it, but it doesn't have to be too big. And motifs are usually small because they're meant to go around things, and we don't want a whole lot of stitches and things anyway. So we're going to try to make it with as few stitches as possible, but let's get this shape on here. So the first thing that I know about this shape is it has an applique component. So it's got a zigzag that you can use to hold down the raw edge of your material, okay? So the ones that I've seen have like 4 points, and so there's my 4 points on the bottom of, it's a basic zigzag. And we could refine these and make them all mix and match, but I'm using this kind of, this grid to kind of help me line things up, and I'm thinking about 2 points on this side and 2 on that side. No rules. Your motif can be however you want it, so I'm just playing with the shapes. The other thing that I've seen is that it also has like this cute little scallop, right? So that's kind of like a wagon wheel. So let's just kind of draw that out. And I know there is a line that goes across it. And then inside this wagon wheel are some little spokes. So I counted one that I saw, and it had 5 spokes. It had one down the center, and then I had 2 on either side of this. So in order to get them just right, I'm kind of splitting the shape and putting, the spokes in just to get just a rough approximation of what I want the final thing to look like, okay? Now, when you're drawing things out with your embroidery software, you can play with nodes and the shape of things for hours, days. Like, there is no end to it sometimes. I'm just changing the color to make that a little bit darker. This is what I kind of want the thing to end up looking like. So that's rough. This is a rough draft. And but I'm going to refine it just a little bit. I'm not going to go too crazy. The real proof of anything is taking it over to your embroidery machine and stitching it out and seeing what actually happens over there. So before I spend hours pushing nodes around, let's get something that we can stitch out so we can get an idea if we're even on the right track. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. So I have this kind of rough draft. Now, this is not a motif that's usable. It's just the idea of things. None of these lines are connected, right? They're just kind of out here on the shape. When I'm planning a motif, I want it to start on one side and finish on the other, so that when there are lots of these on the line, so let's do 3 of them, right? When they're all lined up in a row on my actual embroidery, they kind of sit together and it looks like one thing that kind of just goes along a line, right? Like that, right? Okay, so I don't need these 2. I'm just going to delete them. I just wanted to show you what I'm wanting to happen. So let's draw this out. What we need to do is considered pathing. It's the process of drawing it in such a way that it starts in one place and ends in the other, as if you were drawing with a pencil and you never picked up your point from the paper. That's an efficient way to think about how your embroidery runs over on the machine. Now, this is a light, lacy thing. It's not going to be a whole lot of stitches, but I do want it to run efficiently on the embroidery machine, and I don't want it to get bulky in any points. And I can already see that there is a potential for bulk to happen with these stitches where they all converge right in the center here of the scallop. See how the points of those two zigzag runs end up there, and then also all of these points kind of converge in that center area. So I need to go ahead and start thinking how I'm going to deal with that. So I have a plan in my head, and let me talk you through how I think through the whole process, okay? So as I'm thinking about how this is going to stitch out, this is functioning as an applique stitch. So the most important part to me is this zigzag down here at the bottom. So let's go ahead and draw that zigzag first, right? So I can draw with points, and I'm drawing with, let's draw with lines. So I'm hitting the command key on my MacBook and just giving those line shapes, and I'm tracing over the rough image that I drew earlier. Okay, so I haven't finished my line, it's still drawing, and now I'm going to bring my line back over here to the start, and I'm going to start drawing the wagon wheel. Okay, so I'm just going to give it some points. I'm going to switch to my cusp node here so I can get a nice crisp line, and I'm going to go almost to the center, not quite at the center, and then back out that same line. And I'm going to continue drawing around my curve, another cusp, down to almost the center, back out, and follow my line. There was one in the middle. I want that. And I'm just drawing, click, click. I don't want to put too many nodes in there, but I do want to get enough so that I have a nice curve of that line and get everything in there. And now my little shape ends right where I want it to on the far right side. Now, did I have a line that went all the way across in the middle? Yes, I did, because I went after the zigzag. I went back over here and then started drawing that little shell. So let's look at this new line that I drew. All right, that was the original sketch. This was the new one I drew, and there's a little bit more going on because I have some of those lines running on top of each other. And it's looking a little choppy, but before we do anything else, let's apply our stitches to that line. Okay, so let's just add a running stitch. I want that to be a single run, and I want it to be about 2.5 millimeters is good. That's what I was using last time. So let's zoom in a little bit closer and let's see what's going on here. Okay, I can see that I didn't hit everything exactly where I wanted my points to hit. I'm just moving it up so I can see it so none of these grid lines are bugging me. I don't need this one anymore, all of these shapes that I drew earlier. So I'm going to delete that and move them off the screen so I don't have to see them anymore. But I'm going to go ahead and start moving my nodes around. So remember we talked about the place where those nodes could converge might be an issue. It's not going to be too much of an issue because these are all running stitches, but I don't want them to be so bulky right there. So I'm kind of putting them around that center point and not exactly right up on it. So I'm giving myself a little bit of leeway here to just get those close to each other and not necessarily right on top of each other. And so I may have to move some out of the way in order to get to the right node that I want, or I may have to zoom way in on it and see how they're kind of close but not right on top of each other. This one I want to meet. Oh, not that one. This one. There we go. Come on, let's get that node. There we go. No, not you. This one. It's like cats getting in the way of each other. I want to pick them one at a time, and I want to get them close but not right on top. Okay, there we go. Now I can drag all those guys back in. Okay, this one, the return was a little bit off and it wasn't right on top of where I wanted it to be. So let's scoot him a little bit closer. And, you know, if you need to get in closer, just expand your view. Zoom in a little bit. There you can actually get to the right node you want. So you can adjust it. Okay, and so I can move these a little bit more to the right area where I want them to be. I can give this area a little bit more curve if it needs a little more curve or a little more attention. And I can push these nodes around until I have something that I like. Okay, so I'm just pushing these nodes, making this shape exactly what I want I want it to be this cute little wagon wheel shape. I've practiced this a couple of times, and so I've given it a couple of names, but we're going to call this one, I mean, it's like a little wagon wheel. Maybe it's like a little croissant. It's your motif. You can call it whatever you want. A little scallop baby. I'm going to move those points in a little bit closer, and I like this. Now, if you didn't hit it right the first time, it's okay. This is just practice, and we're all on the computer, and we haven't ruined anything. We haven't used any fabric or any thread. All we've done is move points around on the screen. So I'm kind of moving my zigzag so it's a little bit more regular and even. But I'm really happy with that. I like the way that looks. I'm going to make sure my bow tie is right there at the corner. So if I'm looking at an actual line, these are right at the edge so that the next one's going to fit one right after the other. Okay, let's do something real quick. Let's do a stitch simulator, and let's run this and see actually how this would play out on the software. Well, that was fast. There's not a whole lot of stitches. This is not even a half an inch tall or just over a half an inch wide. I went really fast, 66 stitches. So let's slow that down a little bit so we can actually watch what's happening. All right, let's play it again, Sam. Let's go back to the beginning. Oh, there we go. And now let's run the stitch simulator. Okay, that might be a little too slow. Down, up, down, up, down, up. But I'm going to let it do that. So we're going pretty slow, back across. Yes, yes, I want that to happen. And then here we're starting to draw the spokes going around our wagon wheel, or our little, you know, monster head with zigzag teeth, whatever you want to call him. I think he's going to be called the croissant monster. It looks like a little croissant. All right. Yeah, that looks good. I'm happy with that. So let's save it. Okay, that's always a really important thing to do. So let's give it a name over here. We're going to call this the croissant scallop. Croissant has two S's. Croissant scallop motif. All right, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this as a file. Save the working file. Give it a name. I'm going to put it in my test motifs file. I'm going to call this the croissant scallop motif, and now I have my BE file saved. That means that if I wanted to go make some adjustments on this or use part of it, it's saved. It's the working file, it's saved, and if I break it by doing something silly, I can always go back right here. Okay, so now that's saved. I'm going to go ahead and kind of put this guy right in the middle. Right, that just helps me double check that I've lined everything up right. I've got everything in a good spot. I do see one little adjustment that I want to make. Right here, I need to turn back on create mode. And let's see, let's select this guy. And then one of these nodes, not that one. I'm going to scoot you over so I can get this one. I wanted to pull him in down just a little bit and put that back. It just didn't look quite round right there to me. And also, actually, you know what I see is this guy over here is in a little bit, I think he needs to scooch over a little bit. Do you see how he's way, way, way over there? Let me zoom in real quick so I can get to the right node. Pull him up here so we can see it. I really want him to be more over there. Like, scoot over, guy. All right, that's better to me. I like that better. And maybe this one doesn't need to be so far up. He's taken up. It's like when your kids are cutting pizza for themselves, and they always cut themselves a big piece and leave a small piece for something else. This is reminding me of that. So the way you overcome that is you tell them, okay, you cut the pieces for everybody else. Or you let your brother cut your piece if you're going to cut his piece like that. And then they're more likely to make it more fair to each other. So, I don't know why I'm thinking about pizza. Maybe it's pizza day today. We'll see. We'll see what the people feel like in here. All right. These look really good to me. So I'm keeping all those nodes kind of near each other, but not on top of each other, so I don't have a big bird's nest over at the embroidery machine. You can see where my stitches land at this size. And I'm going to save this again. So I've adjusted it. So let's save the working file again. So that new, you know, those little adjustments that I made are now saved. And let's turn this into a motif. It's not anything right now. It's just a little shape. So if I could save it, I have to turn it into a stitch file to send to my embroidery machine. But I'm only going to get this one little wagon wheel with its little zigzag teeth at the bottom. That's all I'm going to get. A motif is repeating, so it goes along the edge of a line. It can fill a shape up. Let's see how to do that. So we're zoomed way in here. Let's zoom back out again so we can actually get to a shape, and let's turn it into a motif. So even though I've called it a motif, it's not actually a motif yet. It's going to be in just a second. So let's go to create, publish, and we're going to publish a motif. Normally you'd be publishing a design or you'd be publishing a font, but this is how you make it a motif. So it shows up in your software and you can use it over and over. Okay, so I'm going to click motifs. I'm going to give my name in here. I'm going to call this the croissant scallop motif. I don't know why I always say croissant like that now. It's probably a meme that my kids just repeated over and over. Now it's stuck in my head. So that's how we say croissant now. So croissant scallop motif. I am going to choose this button first for my use. That means it saves it on this computer so that I can use it in Embrilliance Stitch Artist whenever I open up Stitch Artist on this particular computer. This is my MacBook, my laptop computer that I use, and not my desktop. So this version of Embrilliance is only running over here. So whatever I do on this computer doesn't automatically update over there. I'm pointing across the room on my desktop computer because those are two separate computers. Embrilliance isn't a web-based software. It's a downloadable software that runs on one computer at a time. And even though you have a license to put it on as many computers as you want, what happens on one computer doesn't just happen on other computers automatically. So I'm going to save it for my use to use on this computer. So let's click that button. But I also want to make it available so I can use it on another computer. So I don't have to redo this process and draw a new motif over there on that computer. So I have published it for my own use on this computer only, and now it's saved in my folder that I made for the test motifs, and I called it the croissant scallop motif. So it's saved now in my library of motifs that I can use when I click on motif up here. But before I do that, I want to save it as the BX file so that I can access a BX file and either email it to myself on another computer, put it on a thumb drive, use a cable, however you get things from one computer to another. I'm going to save it as a BX file that I can do that with it, okay? So I appreciate this notification because it reminds me to not only save, you know, the motif, right? It put it in my library. I've saved it for my own use, but it reminds me to save that working file. Now, we did that already, but I appreciate the reminder because I don't always remember to do that. So I'm going to say, okay. And now I'm going to save it as the BX font. So over here in the test motifs folder that I just made, you can see kind of grayed out that the croissant scallop motif.be file is already in there. And the new file that it's making right now is the croissant scallop motif.bx. That's the installer file that I will use, that I will send to another computer. Okay, so I could give it to anybody. I could sell it on the internet. I could put it on my other computers that I use Embrilliance software on. But I need to save that BX file so I can install this motif in other places. So let's save it. And now it is saved. So let's go back and look at my file manager. And you can see that in this folder, I've got the croissant scallop motif.be and the croissant scallop motif.bx. I need those two files in there. You don't always need them, but if you're going to use it on another computer, I want it. So I'm going to save the file. It doesn't take up hardly any room at all, so it's no big deal. But I can access this now from other computers. All right, let's go back into Embrilliance and let's see how to use this. So we can say, okay, we're done with that script that the software is running, and we can use this motif somewhere now. So let's make some shapes that we could use this for. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab a new screen. Okay, so I've got a new tab open here in Embrilliance, and I'm going to click, I don't know, let's click some of these outlines that Embrilliance comes with. So I was playing with something else before. Let's go to the Embrilliance outlines something, and we've got all kinds of cool outlines we could use in here. We've got stars, we've got hearts, we've got shields, all kind of stuff. I love playing with the hearts. I love the hearts. Let's do this heart right here. That's a pretty one. So that heart comes in, and let's look at the size. It's about 2 inches tall, almost, or 2 inches wide, and just about 2 inches tall. Let's make it 2 inches tall just to be consistent. 2 by 2. All right, that's a good looking heart. Maybe this heart's going to be an applique. We're going to fill it with fabric or vinyl or heat transfer vinyl, something, but we want to have that lace edge on it. Okay, so I'm thinking of an applique, and my appliques, I like to have 3 steps. So I like to have a placement stitch, a tack down, and a finishing stitch. So in order to change this shape of a heart into an actual applique, I need to duplicate this 3 times. So let's do Control C, Control V, Control V, and now I have 3 times of that one outline. You can see over here in my object window. These lines right now are just sitting one right on top of each other. That's how I want them to run on over at the embroidery machine. But in order for the machine to stop in between each one, I need to change the colors. So the first thing that I do when I'm doing any embroidery file is I switch everything over to my preferred thread palette. My preferred thread palette is Isocord, just because I have all of the colors, and that's what I digitize in. There's like 388 colors. It's plenty of colors for me to choose from. You can use whatever thread brand you want, but that's what I do mine in. Okay, this first one, I like to make it, just the first option, which is this pink tulip color. All right, so the first line is going to be my placement stitch. The second line needs to be a totally different color. So that one actually didn't change to my preferred ones. Let's change everything to preferred. Okay, so the second one needs to be my tack down stitch. So it needs to be different than the first color. So let's make that one white. Okay, so light pink, then white. The third one is going to be where I'm going to put the motif. That's going to be my applique finishing stitch. It's going to cover the raw edges, hold down the fabric, or whatever else I need. Or it may just be that I want to run the motif and just have something pretty on top of that. But for this version, excuse me, it is the finishing stitch. So let's change that to a completely different color again, and let's make that one golden. Okay, so I've got 3 distinct colors here: pink, white, golden. Okay, and now I need to have 3 distinct steps of stitching. Let's apply some stitches to those. So the first tack down I'm going to use as a single running stitch, 2.5 millimeters long. This stitches on the stabilizer or on the background fabric to show me where to put my applique material. I want my applique material to be a little bit bigger than this, so I put a little bit bigger piece of material over these placement stitches when I'm at the machine. The second run, that different color, the second color, is going to be my tack down stitches. Now, again, it's a running stitch, but I like it to be a double running stitch. And this double running stitch holds down that piece of material that we laid over on top. I like to make sure that that double run has tie ins and outs so that none of the stitches come out. And then after my material is tacked down, this is the point where I stop and I trim all around it. So I set a stop at my machine so that I can tell the machine, hey, I need you to stop for a minute so I can do some work on top of the hoop. So that's my tack down stitch. The last outline is where we're going to put our motif, and that's our finishing stitch. Sometimes you might want this to be your satin stitch. For this effect, we're going to use that lacy croissant scallop stitch. So let's apply that motif to this run. Okay, it's not a run yet, it's just a line. Let's apply the motif to this line and adjust it until we get it where it looks nice like we like it. So we do that by going up here to our stitch options, and one of them is called motif run. And we're going to use this motif run to go into, oops, that's the wagon wheel version of this. And we're going to go into our motif library, and we're going to pick that croissant scallop that we just made. There it is right here. So Sheila Ryan croissant scallop stitch, hit OK, and that croissant scallop stitch comes in and fills our line with those little croissants and those applique stitches. Now those are huge, right? That's not exactly, you don't want that. So we need to adjust that up and down here. So what I need to do is I need to adjust the height of my scallop, and I don't want it to be a full, whole centimeter, 11 millimeters tall. That's a lot. So let's make it 5 millimeters tall. Much better. And I also don't want it to be so wide either. So let's make it less wide. Maybe about, see what happens if it's 10 millimeters wide. Oh no, that's too big too. So let's keep going down until we get it to where we like it. Let's do 5 millimeters wide. Oh, that's nice. Now, this is a heart, and a heart has a little, little divot right there. And maybe I don't want it so divoty, but whatever I do to this line, I got to do to all the previous lines too. So I'm thinking about that. That motif that we made has a lot going on right there. So maybe I need to do some adjustments to the shape before I get this far. Maybe I need to apply my finish edge first and then make copies of it so I have my placement and tack down stitching. So if something happens with that shape, it can be adjusted, and then I don't have to go back and adjust 2 more instances of it to get everything to match up just right. So that's something to think about. Actually, when it would be fine, except that I don't have one of those motifs sitting right here. I don't, because they would overlap, but that means that I don't have those zigzags either. So those zigzags would not cover up that area. One thing I could do is I could change the start and stop point. That might help. Let's add another node over here and open and close it. Okay, well, that did something over here, but it also affected things down here as well. So this may not be the right shape to use for that instance of it. Okay, so let's try something simpler. Let's start a new tab. Let's do a different shape. All right, so let's just grab one of these fly out shapes, and maybe let's do a funky little square. All right, so I got a regular rectangle. I'm going to do some crazy things to the corners, and I'm going to just drag that down and make them a little inset. All right, make it a little bit bigger. So this is going to be an applique frame. Maybe you're going to put a name or a monogram or something inside of there. Whatever you want to do, it's fine. But let's apply that motif run to this shape. Let's change the color just so we can see it a little bit better. Let's make it a little bit darker. There we go, green. Green's nice. Okay, so now when we apply our motif run, it'll bring up the last thing we were working on. Okay. And now the shape should be, it comes in similarly to what we were using before. We've got these little bends in our shape that the motif is just trying to fit around in there in the size that you made it, and you can adjust it until it starts looking like you want it. So you adjust the height, you adjust the width. Maybe you've already tested this out so you know what size you want it to be, but you're making some adjustments until it fills the line the way you want it. If you don't like the way it fills the line, you could break your line apart and then have different chunks of the motif that run, and they'll stop and then start again, and maybe they'll fill the line better. So there's no one right answer here. There are just lots of ways to accomplish so you get the look you want. Remember that if you're adjusting this, you want that zigzag, if you're using this as an applique, you want that zigzag to be wide enough to cover the edge of your material. If it is functioning as an applique finishing stitch, you need that zigzag to be wide enough. So think about that when you're considering both the width and the height of your motif as you're playing around with the adjustments. The other thing that you can also play with is, do you want a gap in between those little croissants? So you can, when you add a gap, it'll evenly space it around your shape with a little bit more room in between each of those croissants. Okay, so maybe they're not applique, maybe they're just decorative little croissants that you have going around a shape. Maybe when you do that, you need to have them taller or skinnier or, shorter, but there's all kinds of ways you can play with that. And then I like the way that looks, but I don't want that much of a gap. So no gap. And then let's play with the shape just a little bit to get it to fill a little bit better. Okay, that's looking all right to me. We could do this for hours. And sometimes that's fun, and sometimes you just need to get the thing done. But yeah, that actually looks really good. the shape fills that the applique fills that shape a little nicely. I might want one more scallop up there, so let's just take it down just a tiny bit. No, maybe we need to go up a tiny bit. There we go. That looks good. Good. So sometimes it just takes playing with it until it fills in just right. I like that a lot. So here's some other things that you can do with it. I did those already over here. You could just have one line. Okay, so look at this shape. Control C. Move this over here and make another instance of it. Take the motif off. And see, that's just a line right now. So I haven't added the motif. When I add the scallop to it, right, it comes in big, and you can shrink it down. It and make it pretty however you want it. It can be on the left side of the line or the right side of the line, and you can switch it by flipping it like that. You can make it be top down or bottom down. There's just lots of ways to play with the scallop tool. You could take another shape. Let's get another instance, another tab open here. And maybe you just want to fill your shape with that wagon wheel design. So if you wanted to fill it, you're going to go to the motif fill, and now the shape is filled with those cute little scallops. And that's pretty cool. So you can change the size of them in there, the width, the height, the gap in between each one. You can even make it so that they are in regular rows and columns, or they're offset from one row to the next. You could change the fill pattern and make it curved. So that's kind of cool. It looks kind of like a Christmas ornament or disco ball kind of effect there. It gives it, so, it's kind of floating on like a 3D kind of shape. I mean, you can play with the density. There's, look, all kinds of stuff you can do when you start playing with the fill options. We haven't used any thread or fabric yet. We're just playing with the software, just seeing what it looks like. This is just a visual starting point. Okay, so I think that's actually kind of cool. That's kind of fun, and you could do all kinds of crazy cool things. But you could even combine this fill. Let's change the color of that just to make it different than the other pages we were working on. You can combine this motif fill with other motifs. So let's add another motif in here. So let's go to the regular Embrilliance motifs, and let's add a satin. Let's add this little satin doodad right here in between each of those scallops. Do you see how there are the scallops, then a little diamond baby? We can adjust the size of each of these independently from each other. So now the diamond's bigger. That's going to cover them up. The width of it's bigger. We can put some gaps in there to really change things up. See, there's just all kinds of decorative little doodads over here on this frame. Let's do it the heart where let's add something to it. So let's add let's add the satin dot in between. So now we've got a great big satin dot in between each of those scallops. Now we have a little bitty satin dot between each of those scallops. See, there's just all kinds of things you can do. And maybe you want a gap, maybe you don't. It just depends on, what strikes your fancy at the moment. That actually is quite delicate. There's no wrong answer. It's just what effect are you going for. So that's a little bit about motifs. Just be sure that you save your BE files, save your BX files so you can use it on your other computer that you have Stitch Artist and Embrilliance saved on. But this works in any version of Stitch Artist that you have, level 1, 2, or 3. So draw some motifs and play with it and see what happens. Just because it doesn't come built into the software doesn't mean that you can't have it too. So you just have to draw it yourself. I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.